Hey, what's up you guys? So today I'm going to be discussing an Ember in the Ashes by SABAA TAHIR. So this book was a fun book to read. I am giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I do have a few things where I'm like, about it, but for the most part I did really enjoy it. And Ember in the Ashes is about a girl whose parents and grandparents are killed, and her brother gets captured by the soldiers of the land, and she goes and becomes a spy for the resistance so that she can try to help her brother escape from the prison that he's in. And then we also have another main character who is a guy who is a student at that military school that she is spying on. And so naturally they're gonna meet, and that's what this book is about. So let's start off with the non-spoilery section. So let's start off with some of the stuff that I like. I liked how this started off with a small setting and a few characters. I think that is always something a strong fantasy novel should do, or at least a good beginning fantasy novel to a series, is just kind of start off a little bit smaller. I think that makes it a lot more devourable. Is that what I'm looking for? It makes it a lot easier to consume as the reader if you're just jumping into a new fantasy series and they start off a little bit smaller with their world building, because it just helps you get a grasp of the world if it's a little bit of a smaller area that you're looking at with just a few characters that you can really latch on to, and then from there you can start to expand. And so I liked how this book started off with, you know, 2 POVs and not like 50 POVs. I also thought that this had some really powerful and emotional moments. There were some moments where I was genuinely scared for these characters and I did not know how they were going to get out of the situations that they were in. I did not like some of the things that happened to some of these characters. I think that this book, it really was very harsh to one character in particular. Both of the main characters was very harsh to, but one of them, she was more affected and he was more effective. She had things done to her that were harsh, and he did things to other people that were harsh that he didn't want to do. So I think that that was like a cool little juxtaposition. They were kind of two sides of the same coin. So I liked that. I also enjoyed this world. I thought that it was different from some of the other fantasy worlds that I've seen. It kind of had some Middle Eastern, I almost said Midwest vibes, but Middle Eastern vibes to it. It feels very deserty, and I like that. I like that it is different from kind of what I'm used to. I also like the development that we got for the world in this book. I really do like whenever the world's history is tied into what's going on in the story. For instance, with Throne of Glass, there are a lot of things that are tied into that world's history that play a role in what happens in the story of their story today. And so this one, we got some development there for that, so we know that the world is going to play a role in what's going to happen in the overall conflict of the series. So now on to some things that I did not like as much. I did not like the beginning of this book very much. I think that it started off really slow, like weirdly slow, for the fact that it started off on an action. But I don't think that it did it very well. I think that it would have been better had this book started off almost like 5 scenes in the future, and then we got those 5 scenes later on as kind of a backstory, as kind of filler information, because it was necessary information for us to have, but it really could have been thrown in a paragraph somewhere rather than us seeing it and experiencing it, because it doesn't set up the actual story. So I think that everything leading up to the inciting incident was not as well done or as well polished as it could have been, but it was still very exciting. So I do recommend, if you're reading this book, give it 50 to 100 pages before you really give up on it, because it does take a minute to latch onto those characters, because you do have to get past that initial action. Another thing that I didn't like as much about this book was that we got really few scenes with our 2 protagonists together. We got a few of them, but we didn't get enough of them, I felt, to really start to develop their relationship. So I'm hoping that in the future books we can get more of those scenes. But overall, all of the scenes that they did have together in this book, I was so here for. I am gonna be so here for their relationship. So I'm gonna launch into my spoilery section now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, bye. So another thing that I did not like as much about this book was the fact that the resistance was super shady, and it was so obviously shady. Like, I normally like when in a book you can kind of see what's gonna happen, but you don't see it very clearly. You can make guesses, and sometimes you hit the mark, many times you miss. The more times you miss, the better, in my opinion. But as long as in retrospect you can kind of see that it made sense, I like that. In this book, it was a little bit too obvious that the resistance was shady. So now let's get into the actual story of this book. Let's start off with the beginning. As I said, it starts off on an action. I'm not really the biggest fan of how this book starts off, but we start off with our main character Leia, and her brother gets taken. Her grandparents get killed. Her parents are already killed, and so she is on the run, and she joins up with the resistance, and they want her to become a spy for the resistance and spy on the commandant of Blackcliff, which is their military academy. So my problem with this book is it took way too long for her to become a spy. Like, everything leading up to that, I was almost kind of bored. Like, I liked the characters, but I was like, when are we gonna start seeing the actual story happen? So I'm glad that we eventually got there. I just think that it took too long to get there. Now let's talk about a few other characters that are going on here. So we've got Helen in the story. Oh my god, this is such a mess of a book review. I'm sorry, you guys. Helen, I don't like her though. I think that she's not a great person. Like, the fact that she doesn't see slaves as people, like, that's offensive, okay? It's gonna be hard for her to come back from that, in my opinion. Like, it took way too much for her to heal Leia. So in order for me to like her, she's going to have to do some hardcore redemption, even though she's not really painted as a bad character in this book, because, like, what the hell, man? So now let's talk a little bit about Izzy and Cook. So I loved both of them. I actually loved how SABAA TAHIR did their naming in here. So the Commandant didn't really want them to have names or remember their names or whatever. So Izzy was called Kitchen Girl, Cook was called Cook, Leia was called Slave Girl. And so I loved how they all, even though they had kind of names that were not names, they were still differently identified, so that at least me as the reader, I could kind of identify them all differently, so they didn't all kind of blend together. I like that they were still painted as individual people by the words of the book, even if some of the characters in this book didn't want to paint them as individual people, and I like how that was not really a great thing. Like, it wasn't good. Slavery equals bad, if you didn't know, people. So another character in this book is Keenan. He is one of the resistance members. He does not seem very trustworthy to me. Now, none of the resistance seem trustworthy to me from the outset. Like, I did not like how untrustworthy they seem from the outset. But Keenan specifically, I don't know what it is about him, but there's something that just seems off. Like, every scene that he's in, I'm like, it just seems off. Like, there are things where I'm like, shouldn't he kind of know that they're lying to her? Like, I don't understand why he doesn't find it shadier. Like, he tells her all of these, like, shady things that he's finding going on with the resistance, but, like, why isn't he trying to figure any of it out, you know? If he were a good person in a fantasy novel, you know he'd be skulking around figuring shit out. But he's not skulking around. So I just don't trust him, because he's not figuring enough things out for me to be like, I trust you. So hopefully he will bring it back in the next book, but I think that he's going to turn out to be the spy. Okay, that's what I'm thinking. That's my theory. We'll see if it happens. Next, let's talk about Marcus, who is actually disgusting. Every scene that he was in, and especially every scene that he was in where he was in it with Helen, I was like, ew, you know? Like, yeah. So I'm not super pumped for the next book with Marcus and Helen, and the fact that, like, he's got complete control over her. Like, that's terrifying. That is so abusive. It's going to turn out so bad, and I'm so nervous for her. Even though I still don't particularly like her, I don't think that she deserves what I think is going to happen to her in the next book. Okay, so now that we've talked kind of about all of the side characters, let's talk about our main ones. Let's focus on them for a little bit. So, Elias. Oh boy, I like him. Like, he is such a fun guy to read from. I think that his kind of guilt mentality makes him seem very good to me. Like, I always love a guilty guy who knows when he's doing bad things, but he doesn't know how to not do bad things. I'm curious to see how he's going to kind of change in the next few books, but in this book, oh boy, I just loved how he was breaking away from these teachings that he'd had all of his life. I loved how he saw the slaves as people. I loved how he saw Leia as a person. I loved every interaction that he had with Leia, like, especially after she had been branded and he came and helped her. I loved when he, you know, found her after Marcus had hurt her. I loved that scene, and I loved how he, like, begged Helen to help her. I loved when she was the prize for one of the tasks, and that makes me really curious to see what the augurs are doing. Like, I don't genuinely understand what their, like, goal is or what they're doing, because it seems like everything that they say is, like, so two-faced. Like, they are the one thing that I think was done really well in this book, especially, was them, because I don't know if they're good or bad. I can't tell. Like, are they? Because they helped out our main characters, but also they're on the side of the Empire. Like, what are they? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they people? Like, what are they? So curious to see what's gonna happen with that. So anyways, back to Elias and all of his scenes. So he was going through and doing the trial to become the next emperor, and I was so nervous for him because, like, it was almost like one of those things where it's like he's got to win.
But then he didn't. I was like, what? No.
This shouldn't have happened. So he's not going to be emperor, at least not yet. I think my theory for the end of the series is he's going to be emperor, okay? Just, that's my theory for the end of the series. I have no backing for this. I have no reason to believe this, but it is my theory. So just go with me on it, okay? He is doing a lot of things. I really loved the battlefield scene, and I'm nervous that he is going to wind up killing Leia because, like, wouldn't that be such a great twist at the end of the series for him to actually be the cause of her death? Like, it would be so heartbreaking, but it still would have been something that we would have seen coming. So now that I've talked about him and what kind of happened with him, let's talk about Leia and her story. So she is here trying to save her brother the entire time. So I loved her ambition and drive to save her brother. I did not like how naive she was. Again, the resistance was hella shady from day one. So the fact that she did not pick up on that, or the fact that she kind of trusted them, I was like, girl, really? Like, learn you some stuff, okay? Like, see through the lies that people tell you. Like, that is an important skill in life. You need to be aware of the fact that people can lie to you like that. And, like, you need to be aware of that. And so if you're trusting them this much with something, you better be damn sure. Like, you should not have a doubt in your mind if you are trusting them with your life, with someone else's life, whatever. You should not have a doubt in your mind. And there should have been doubts galore in her mind because they never told her anything. So I just didn't like that she seemed kind of naive in that respect. That was my one problem with her. But I hope that she kind of learned from this and won't be as naive in the future of this series. So she is going through and she's being a slave, and oh my goodness, every scene with her and the commandant, I was like, no, get me out of this. Like, I want to leave. I want you to tell me when this scene starts and when it ends, and I don't want to be here for it. Like, that was every scene because they all made me so uncomfortable and I was so scared for her, and I was like, I don't want to feel these emotions. I don't want to. Take it away. Take it away. Take it away, man. So that's what's happened with her. And she, you know, meets Elias. Again, all of their scenes super cute. I already said that. But she also forms a friendship with Izzy, and I love their friendship. I think that they are such a cute group of friends. Like, they really grow to rely on each other, but also at the same time not really rely on each other, so that they're, like, still independent. You know, they're a good set of friends who know how to be themselves but also be together. You know what I mean? Like, I hope you know what I mean. I loved how Laya and Cook also developed as well. I loved how Cook was very not trusting of her, and it's not that she wasn't trusting her, it's that she wasn't trusting the commandant to not abuse that relationship. And I loved how we slowly got Cook's and Izzy's backstory and how they both were disfigured the ways in which they were. But then she winds up getting used in the last trial. And again, I think this comes down to whatever the augurs are doing. And I need to know. Like, I want to know. But in order for this series to really be a great series for me, I'm going to have to know. So I'm hoping that in the next book or the next book after that, we get some development on them so that we can start to kind of form an idea for what's going to happen. Laya winds up rescuing Elias after Elias loses, and Laya fakes her death. So they're both able to escape into the sunset. Marcus and Helen are going to be Emperor and Bloodstrike, and that's not gonna be great. Elias and Leia are on the run, and I am super pumped to see what they're able to do with that. I'm super pumped to see if they're able to save her brother, and I'm really excited to see their relationship grow. I'm excited to have so many more scenes with them together. I am excited to see what happens with Helen. I'm hopeful to get a good redemption for her. I need her to show me that she can see people as people, regardless of their class or station. But, you know, that's just a side thing that's really important for me in order for me to like her or want to spend any amount of time sympathizing with her, because I genuinely can't with that one statement alone. Like, she's got to prove me wrong. So I'm hopeful that she will develop further. I'm hoping that she will start to get a little bit of a redemption, at least in my mind. I don't know if in your mind she needs a redemption, but to me, I'm like, she needs to do something to redeem herself in that regard. I think that also in the next book we're going to get some Elias Laia development. Super pumped for that. I think that we are going to get some of this love square hammered out because, you know, Laia has interest in Keenan and in Elias. Elias has interest in Laia, but also Helen a little bit, but also not Helen a little bit. So I'm hopeful that we can kind of start to chop away at those other two and fortify the Elias branch of the square. So that's kind of where the book leaves off. That's kind of what my thoughts are for the next book. I'm hopeful to figure out what the augurs are doing. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, share, all that jazz. Comment down below what you thought of an Ember in the Ashes. Comment down below some of your theories for A Torch Against the Night. I will see you in my next video. Bye!